Good morning and welcome to the Futura Medical PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted any time by the Q&A tab situated in the right corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll. And I'd now like to hand you over to James Barder, CEO. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning and thank you for that and welcome everybody. First of all, just the usual disclaimer and now very pleased to myself. I'm James Barder, I'm the Chief Executive, and I'm joined by Ken James, Executive Director and Head of R&D, and also Angela Hildreth, who's the Finance Director and COO. First of all, I'm just going to give you, Ken and I are going to give a brief summary. If you haven't beforehand, can I suggest that you look on Thursday we did an investor seminar which is now up on our website, and I strongly recommend you review that. Without further ado, let's move on to a short presentation. So a little bit about Futura. We are an AIM-listed company. We describe ourselves as a virtual organisation. We employ 15 staff, including directors, and so we therefore have a pretty low overhead base. We have a significant outsourced infrastructure. We use external contract manufacturers, and we have on our books around about 30 consultants. We kind of plug in and out a bit like light bulbs as and when we need them, but it's the most efficient way of optimizing that value. Our real core asset is dermaSys, which we describe as basically it's applying skin science to deliver novel therapeutic clinically proven treatments. I should also add that we always look to find intellectual property around this, and patents are very important. For example, on MED 3000 patents, we've applied for those, and those are progressing through the usual process that you do, which typically takes a year, maybe up to 3 years to get granted. Again, we look for clinically proven innovation using these gel formulations, and we have an experienced management team. And our main focus at this stage is on sexual health. Our core product, which I'm sure most investors will be aware of, is MED 3000. This is a topical gel for the treatment of erectile dysfunction. It is now both EU and FDA approved, for available without a doctor's prescription in the US. It is also approved in around about 5 Middle Eastern countries, and we do expect over the next year, 2 years, for the approval to roll out through many other countries throughout the world. Key differentiator with this treatment is the fast onset of action, and the claim that we can make is it helps you get an erection within 10 minutes. So just a sort of brief summary of sort of key development and commercialization milestones that we've done over the last 2 years. Ken has run two clinical studies, FM57 and 71. Which helped us initially get EU approval, and more recently the US FDA approval. Key regulatory approvals, commercial distribution agreements are in place now with 4 different companies. In Southeast Asia, we have Menarini. We do also have a deal that was done with Cohau, but we are currently examining exactly what we're going to do with that, as it's not progressing at the speed that we would like. In the Middle East, we have a deal with Labatec Pharma, and we've already indicated that we will be shortly launching in the Middle East, or they will be rather. In Europe, and including the UK, we use a company called Cooper Consumer Health. And then finally in Latin America, we have a deal with a company called M8 or Moksha 8 Pharmaceuticals. We've already had initial launches in UK and Belgium, both retail and online, and there are further launches that are underway now in France, Italy, and Spain. Initially online, and that we followed up in due course with bricks and mortar launches. There are a number of other further launches that we expect, not only in 2003 but also beyond. Key strategic outlook for us. Very much now that we've got US approval, is to find a US commercial partner. We've got a number of discussions that are progressing, and when we can say more to shareholders, we'll obviously do that. Key thing here is that this is the first over-the-counter topical treatment in the US, which is a huge milestone. In addition to obviously the US commercial partner and including arrangements there, we're also looking to complete our distributor network and develop a robust supply chain to basically make MED a long-term sustainable and profitable product, and that is progressing well. There will be further launches under the brand name Eroxon over the next 12 months and beyond. And in particular, we'll be focusing on our pipeline, not only on what we've already disclosed beforehand, but also where we can maybe bring more innovation for MED. We're already getting from our commercial partners, how can we extend that? How can we develop basically a new category? Ken.
Good morning, everyone. These are the key attributes of Eroxon. It's clinically proven, as James has mentioned. We've run 2 clinical studies, FM57 and FM71. In both of those studies, the data was fairly consistent between them, and we showed that the product is effective in mild, moderate, and severe ED. We put a mix of etiologies into each of those studies: psychological origin, organic origin, and the majority of subjects in those clinicals have a mix of both of those. Across an age range of 18 to 70. Key, we feel, to the success of the product is the differentiated consumer claim, helps you get an erection within 10 minutes, which is now approved in not just the EU and the UK, but the United States, importantly. And the importance of that is that it allows spontaneous intercourse to occur, whereas the oral medications, which, by the way, are on prescription for the foreseeable future in the United States, but they typically take 30 to 60 minutes to work. So this is a key differentiating claim. And we find in the clinicals that couples do use the product as part of foreplay. Because we have a medical device and it's drug-free, the product is extremely safe. We experience very low side effects in males and their partners. And there are no adverse drug interactions, which is, again, a point of differentiation from the oral medications, where there are a number of drug-drug interactions, and we don't have that issue. And we have availability in OTC in all the markets where we have approvals now. Importantly, the US, where we are the first meaningful erectile dysfunction product to be over the counter.
And then a final, and again, I repeat what I said earlier. This is just one of the slides that was shared last week at the investor seminar with institutions. And it's just a snapshot of research that was conducted last year in the States, but there are a few more slides which Isabel went through last week. So again, I'd urge you to look at that. But this is basically a 5-year launch plan and peak sales for the US at $5 a tube. And we're looking at around about $400 million. Again, that was an Ipsos research that was done back in 2022. We'd done a similar one back in 2017, and the numbers remain consistent with both those different researches. That concludes the slides that we're going to go through. We've deliberately kept it pretty short and sweet to enable investors to have an opportunity to ask various questions.
Perfect. And thank you very much for your presentation. I'll just bring your cameras back up now. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab, which is situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. As you can see, we've received a number of questions pre-submitted and throughout today's presentation. And Angela, if I could just ask you to read out those questions, and what I'll do is I'll pick up from you at the end.
No problem. Thank you. So the first question is for you, Ken, I think.
It's the easy one, actually, yeah.
Yeah. When will the FDA approval process be completed?
Well, I think most of the audience know that we did get approval on the 9th of June, late at night in the UK, at the end of day in the US. Actually, to be more precise, for de novo medical devices, what FDA talk about is granting marketing authorization, but that effectively means approval. So that has been achieved.
Okay. So next question. Ignoring the potential bogus reviews on Amazon and Boots, what percentage of sales have been returned for a refund? Have you got this data, or does the disclaimer of trying 3 to 4 times to get the effect diminish potential returns?
Yeah, I mean, we've had some complaints in, maybe that's the best way of describing it. We haven't issued any refunds at all, I would stress. It's not our responsibility, it's Cooper's, but we work very closely with them. To my knowledge, we've not refunded anybody. As far as level is concerned, I mean, you're dealing with 0.009%, that sort of, I mean, we're talking of very, very few complaints based on the volumes we sold today.
Next question. Given that presentation alluded to 1.9 million sales, so I think that the person who's asking the question is referring to the presentation that Isabel gave on Thursday. Or John, I think, maybe gave that, yeah. Was this just UK or UK-Belgium combined? And how do sales compare between the Belgian smaller pharmacy outlet model and the route taken in the UK of a sole distributor on the high street?
Okay, I mean, I can't recall the exact numbers that John gave, but certainly John was there. He's the marketing director of FUTURA, and FUTURA were appointed by Cooper, who have European and UK and Swiss rights. So he was specifically talking about UK. As far as Belgium is concerned, it's going pretty well there. Not quite as well as the UK, but then they Cooper approached the marketing there in a different way. As we said initially, that these are sort of big, full test launches to gain key learnings from that of how different people act. But basically, they're happy with both Belgium and UK. Is that the whole question?
I think just to add to that.
So Belgium, let me say this, is in addition to.
Yeah, Belgium's in addition to the 1.9, but we've got very little data coming out.
We've got little data coming out yet, and it's not something that it's unlikely we're going to start breaking it down into one country from the next. I mean, I would make the point that we expect in some markets, Eroxon will sell better than others, and that's just cultural differences from one market to the next. But it's unlikely we're going to actually give individual breakdown from one country to the next. It'll be more per region.
Okay. In the presentation, and I think this is the one where Isabel gave the presentation, a figure of 86 times per year usage is mentioned when referencing the USA. If this is the expected average in the UK too, then there should be ample data of developing a repeat prescriptions. I think we need to clarify that, as this would be equating to repeat sales approximately every 17 days or at least every 3 weeks.
Well, I'm not quite sure what the question is.
I think it's around repeats. When will we expect to see repeat purchases? I think.
Well, we already know that we're beginning to see repeats. The frequency, and I think certainly the numbers that we've worked on. 86 was the Ipsos research. And it varies from different forecasts, different models down to around.
And the $409 million opportunity was actually calculated off the back of 55 times. So a lot of the Ipsos research is assumptions that have been made under different scenarios.
Yeah. I mean, certainly, again, there've been a number of different analyses done, not only by us, by commercial partners, and those that we're also in discussions with, and I think 50 or 44, as I think the number that springs to mind, is probably a more realistic number of frequency of intercourse or where people use the treatment. So going back to the gentleman or lady's question, in other words, one pack would last 4 weeks. So surely we should start to be seeing some data now. Again, it's a question of tracking the data. It's not always easy to do that. We're working with Boots, and certainly Cooper are. But the easiest way to track it is usually where somebody has a Boots Advantage card, I think it's called. Not surprisingly, I suppose, women tend to have the card, men don't. So we are getting some data. It's still early days, but certainly I think Cooper, we're pretty pleased with the way the launch is going so far.
We've said we're probably going to understand that a bit more
In
September.
September, yeah.
Okay, so moving on to something completely different altogether, away from sales. It appears that Eroxon trademark was registered by Versailles BV, a Netherlands-based outfit, back in 2022. Interestingly, another product, Aerospons, was registered around the same time. Is this a FUTURA product that has been evaluated?
Okay, well, the first part of that question, Versailles BV is a wholly owned subsidiary of Cooper. So that's why the mark has gone into Cooper's name at the moment. The way that it's just the way we operate with Cooper. Eurospons, I've never heard of, so not anything. It may have
been a name that Cooper were testing at the time.
There was
before their market research showed that Eroxon was a better tested name.
Yeah, that could be what but certainly, I mean, yes, there are things that we're working on. But Eurospons would not be probably a name that doesn't trip off the tongue that well, personally. Next question.
Another one for you.
Australia.
Let me have to ask the question, they can't see it.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you expect to have to run more trials and studies to get authorization/approval in Australia?
The short answer is no. The regulatory process in Australia we understand to be pretty straightforward, actually. And the reason for that is that the Australians do recognise the European CE mark, which is good. We have to have a local sponsor, and we've identified a group of individuals who can act on our behalf in Australia. But beyond that, when we file, it's a relatively straightforward and quick process. We think within a couple of months that could lead to approval in Australia.
And I think I think I mentioned it last week, but we're planning to file in Australia in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. What is a realistic time frame to launch Eroxon in the US market, James?
Well, first of all, we need to have a commercial partner. Those discussions are progressing, and then realistically, it's a difficult question to answer because it does depend on the time of the year, it does depend on the commercial partner, because whereas certainly the discussions we're having with a number of commercial parties, they want to launch as soon as possible. You do have to dovetail that into, especially with a retail and bricks and mortar launch, all major retailers have different windows of when they will restock and refresh their lines. So it's difficult to be too specific on it. I think all I would say is if you look at the deal that we did with Cooper, we signed a deal in May and it was on the market the following year. So that's probably realistically the sort of timelines that we're looking at. If we can do it more quickly, or a commercial partner can do it more quickly, then obviously that will be looked at. But we need to first of all close on a deal with a US partner.
Okay. And I think actually there's another question come through in relation to giving some colour on manufacturing ramp-up plans.
Okay, we've already got 2 partners.
If your computer's gone to sleep, you just need to unlock your computer.
Hi, sorry, I think can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
Just one moment, we're just, there you go.
Okay. Sorry about that.
It just went to sleep.
Is it? Okay. So the question was, yes, about manufacturing. We already have one manufacturer that is producing product, and we are currently looking at several other sites. We're in advanced discussions on that, both in Europe and also on the other side of the pond in America.
That will somewhat depend on the commercial partner that we choose as well, because some commercial partners have manufacturing capability of their own, and some of them would need to outsource that.
So, certainly we have sufficient capacity based on projections for the next couple of years, excluding the US. but certainly for Europe and elsewhere. But we want to, as I think I said earlier, one of our key objectives is to make sure we have a robust supply chain where we have a number of different options in the case of an unforeseen situation like a fire or whatever. So that is progressing well, and we'll update the market more as and when that happens.
Can you please tell us how fast you intend to roll out the launch of Eroxon in other EU countries?
Well, obviously it's not us to start with. I think it's important to emphasise that in all instances we remain as the legal manufacturer, but actual the marketing costs, which are not inconsiderable, the plans where they launch are the responsibilities of the different distributors. And again, with all of them, I would stress, even though we have given them exclusive rights, there are certain key indicators, key performance indicators that the different commercial partners must do around, especially launch, commitment around spend for launch, and so on and so on. We've had a huge amount of interest before Ken successfully got FDA approval, but since then as well. For us, the key thing is finding commercial partners who know how to build a credible over-the-counter brand that, if you like, hasn't had a legacy beforehand as a prescription product. So even though we've had, I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of approaches, it is making sure you're dealing with professional companies who understand the sector, know how to build a brand, which always takes a bit of time. So I've lost what was the question. What was the
rollout in Europe?
Oh, rollout in Europe.
Yeah.
So at the moment, as I said earlier, Cooper very much taking on all the learnings, and there are 3 further launches going on, and there will be a number of other launches that are going to take place over the next year. But again, as I've kind of said beforehand, we have to be slightly careful here. There are certainly commercial sensitivities, and our commercial partners don't necessarily like us flagging ahead of launch exactly what's going on. So we very much have to be circumspect in this, and we'll obviously, and we appreciate investors want to know, we will let investors know as soon as we can do, but that will usually be after the event rather than before the event.
I think it's fair to add, James, that the launch in the UK has gone very well so far, and there's certainly no lack of enthusiasm for rolling out in other countries. In fact, it's gone the other way, if anything.
Yes.
Okay, I think this is one for me actually. Futura receives an undisclosed transfer price on delivery of orders to Cooper rather than on in-market sales, as noted in the Trinity Delta Lighthouse today. Can you explain on whether this means that Eroxon revenues are based on volume, or is there also a share of retail price as well, please? So this is fairly simple to answer. As the legal manufacturer, we contract with the third-party contract manufacturer who manufacture Eroxon. We then mark that up and we sell it directly to Cooper, so they buy it from us. Clearly, it is depending on volume, because the more that or less that they order, the more or less that we receive from them. But in terms of how they then distribute that and price that in the market, we've already taken our margin up front.
And that is, to date, mainly the way we operate in other markets. There are certain milestone payments that can be triggered on volumes, and there are some royalties which tend to be more triggered, not on the retail price, but on the wholesale price. In other words, the price that the distributor is getting before the retailer adds their margin to it. So it does vary from one market to the next, and in part it does vary on what is more appropriate for us, looking at the credit risk and also transparency. And what I mean by that is at times it's not always easy to check exactly what the wholesale price has been achieved in some markets, and therefore at times it's easy just to take it on the transfer price. And I'd also say that there is one other advantage of this, is that as a transfer price, as volumes grow, it gives us greater leverage with with the manufacturers. And as I said earlier, if we've got 2 or 3 manufacturers, then there's an opportunity that as manufacture grows, there are economies of scale and there can be efficiencies in manufacturing. And again, in all the agreements we have in place, there are provisions around there where we will in part benefit from that.
Okay, so a couple of finance questions that have just come in, and I'll probably answer them one at a time. So what operating EBIT or EBITDA margin are you targeting in the medium term? First of all, that is not something that I can answer.
As much as possible.
Yeah, it's not something that I can answer specifically. We're unable to give you any forward-looking statements. We will be guiding analysts such as Trinity Delta and our broker analyst Liberum. We will be guiding them in a bit more detail towards the end of this year as we have more information in terms of launch plans, volumes, pricing, etc. But I'm afraid at the moment today, there's not an awful lot of colour I can give you on that. And then the second financial question is what's the planned R&D spend over the next 12 months? And do you have sufficient funding in place to meet your growth targets? So again, I can't give you a specific number for planned R&D spend. That will be something that we'll guide the analysts when we are ready to. You heard earlier, James talked about innovation of Eroxon, and we're currently evaluating those plans in conjunction with our commercial partners and where they think will add consumer value. But in terms of funding in place to meet our growth targets, following the exercise of the warrants by one of our longest and most supportive shareholders a couple of weeks ago, which resulted in just under 4.5 million of funding being received, in addition to the cash balances that we already have, in addition to the estimated £1 million R&D tax credit, which we're expecting imminently, and in addition to quite conservative revenues that we are expecting coming through, we have said that we have cash visibility into 2025. And when you think about the kind of the value inflecting events that are coming up between now and then, that is long enough for us to secure a commercial partner. That is, long enough for us to get clarity around US launch and US launch timelines. That's enough for us to understand how the rest of Europe is going to be rolled out and when the other commercial partners, are starting to roll out their launches. And also, bringing other commercial partners on board for territories and geographies that we don't currently have. So, looking at Australia, Canada, for example, that's definitely, all work in process. So I think from a funding perspective, sorry, it's a long-winded answer, but it all comes back to being fairly comfortable on our cash position at the moment. Next question is, once launched in the USA, will the company consider a dual listing?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We're still a tiny company as far as what the UK, let alone the US market is concerned. Nevertheless, as the US launch proceeds, we do definitely become more relevant and more US centric because it's by far the biggest market. I think what I would say at this stage is, the company's been very, very focused on getting the launch, getting the obviously product approved in Europe, the US, and then commercializing that. And as that progresses, absolutely, we're going to be looking at a number of different options of, what is the best way to deliver maximum value for shareholders. And a US listing, it's one of many things that we can consider. So depending on whether you consider the glass half full, glass half empty, you can interpret that how you like. It's certainly not been ruled out, but equally so, it's certainly not something that we consider we want to do.
Okay, got a couple of questions around the slides not being shown on the recording from last Thursday. And can other investors have access to all of the information at the same time?
I thought they were.
Yeah, leave it.
Yeah, leave it.
Leave it with us.
Certainly, it was the intent.
Yeah.
And if they were not, we will see what we can do.
Next question.
Oh, wait.
No, we've talked about time frame for US launch. Someone asked if we're safe to assume this is likely to be 2024 rather than 2023.
Well, as we haven't signed a commercial partner yet, I think that's
It's more likely than.
Yeah, it's more likely, yes.
Has the company considered an acquisition of female health companies or partnerships with the likes of Evoca Bio, who are also AIM listed, which would be a brilliant fit for FUM?
Again, I go back to my sort of question around the US. But we've been very, very focused on what we're trying to deliver on, and we've got a very good team here. And I think there are a number of things that we could look at. To be honest, I've never heard of them. Have you heard of them?
Evoca, they're Russian.
I know.
They're listed on AIM. I think it's they're currently running a phase 2 clinical trial in female. They have struggled a little bit with recruitment of that. I'm not sure whether they're running it in Russia or elsewhere. I don't have all of the details. But it's prescription. It's pharmaceutical. They're not devices. They're pharmaceutical. I think that they're focused on the central nervous system, antidepressant, and I think actually we probably not the right. We have looked at female sexual health, but for a lot of reasons it's a lot more complicated, isn't it, Ken?
Yeah, I think
you can say
without putting too fine a point on it, I think that the female market for sexual health is very poorly served at the moment in relation to male products. With male products, obviously the PD5 inhibitors, the oral medications have been around for a while, and they did for a long time offer very, very effective therapy. Of course, now we have Eroxon coming along, which we're very optimistic about. But in the female market, the products tend to be very ineffective and have high side effects as a generality. So if we look at partnerships, we always have to bear in mind those factors, and also they're on prescription. So that's not to say that we're neglecting this area, but at this point in time, partnering with a company that's offering a product that's not very effective with high side effects is not really on our wish list.
I think I'd also add that as a company that has relied on the support, and we've had very good support from both institutional and retail investors, as we start to generate income and therefore hopefully profit, I think there will be, I think certainly the board will be fairly reticent to plunge us back into a debt or loss-making situation by taking on early stage unproven products from other people. Next question.
We have noticed that Cialis launched Cialis Together at Boots around the start of June. Noting that the marketing was geared towards the couple, do you think this is a coincidence, or do you feel it's in response to the Eroxon marketing launch?
Actually, if you look at the way that Cialis was marketed in the US, it's always been a product that is geared towards the couple, so to speak. However, when you look at its therapeutic profile, it's very similar to Viagra. It takes typically 30 to 60 minutes before it starts working. So, the fact that you can't use it for spontaneous intercourse is a limitation, which also applies to Viagra. Also, the products are behind the counter in the UK, and if you wish to buy the product, you have to go through a pretty significant questionnaire, which can be up to 40 questions that have to be answered before the pharmacist will give you the product. That's not a limitation that exists for Eroxon. So it's slow to act, and it takes overcoming a mental barrier to go through the trauma of having to answer all these difficult questions before you're allowed to buy the product in the UK.
I think I'd also add that certainly on all the advisory meetings we've had with key opinion leaders, they consistently say if you can treat the couple, the efficacy of all products is better. So it's no great surprise that shareholders are focusing on treating the couple as opposed to the individual.
Okay, another one for you, James.
Right.
What are your aspirations for the development of your shareholder base and share price over the next couple of years?
Well, every CEO would say the share price is not high enough. I suppose we're a little disappointed where the share price is at the moment, but I mean, the market's not in a great place. Though I think we've done pretty well the last 18 months, 2 years, and I think I'm pretty confident that that will progress with a number of other things that we're working on. Shareholder base, yes, we want to diverse that, expand it, and I think as a company, as we move from loss making, and certainly if you like, essentially pre-revenue, it does open up the opportunities for getting greater institutional support. So it's certainly something that we're conscious of, and certainly something that we'll be looking to expand. I think you missed one. Okay. Yeah. What?
1 second. Are there any plans to launch in high population countries such as India and China?
I mean, yes, we've had significant number of approaches in both markets. As I said earlier, we do have a deal with Kohai in China, which we are currently exploring. It's not progressing as fast as we'd like. We certainly know that as far as China is concerned, we will need additional clinical work. India, I'm not sure at this stage. The focus has been very much on, at this stage, securing a US partner, and other markets kind of slightly secondary to that. The US is by far the biggest market in the world, both in healthcare terms, but also in erectile dysfunction. So that is really been our primary focus, as I kind of touched on earlier on. So absolutely, we want to have a global distribution, and we've got a number of discussions going on, and we'll update shareholders as and when we can do that.
If Futura's listing was moved from AIM to main market, would the company attract more institutional support?
Well, I suppose in answer to that, it's no different to the earlier question about dual listing. It's, I think the board is going to take a pretty open-minded approach on what we do next. What we're clearly looking to do is drive liquidity, drive value, which is in everybody's benefit. But no decisions have been reached on that at this stage. The move from AIM to main market, there are certain pros and certain cons. Certainly you lose all the IHT benefits, and there is tighter regulation. So it's certainly at the moment, it has not been our focus. Our focus has been driving the company to revenue, to obviously break even and then to profit, and obviously, especially on the commercial side, closing out deals and launching in the main markets we can do. But absolutely, these are valid points and something that the board will increasingly consider.
Okay, so this is a follow-up question, and I think it's for me, and it's in relation to the question that we got asked around the transfer price. It has been noted that that potentially discourages your marketing partner to go for margin, encourages your marketing partner to go for margin/high retail price rather than volume. Or if you see retail prices above your expectations, can you dynamically change the wholesale price during the contract? Our partners are incentivized that there are KPIs that they have to contractually meet in the form of advertising and promotional spend. They've also done an awful lot of pricing analysis to determine where the peak prices before volumes start to reduce. And we work very closely with our commercial partners to ensure that is the strategy. So it doesn't really answer the question, but I think we are comfortable that is not a strategy that our commercial partners will undertake, given the contract that we have in place with them.
I think also add is that when we were negotiating with different commercial partners, we had a pretty good idea of what we know that what we felt the market could support from a retail price. And we kind of factored that into whatever the transfer price was. So on an upside, we know what the price is, it's fixed, and if we can drive down the cost of goods of manufacture, then that will increase our margin. The quid pro quo is if they can get a few quid more elsewhere, then well, kind of good luck to them. Again, as you get more of a global market, if somebody tries to be too clever in one market and charge a hell of a lot more, you're going to start, they will struggle from getting parallel imports coming in.
It's suggested that Eroxon discourages oral sex due to taste. Is this correct? And if so, can it be counted?
I don't think the product tastes bad, and we understand that people are using it for oral sex. But I also think it's fair to say that, given the way the product came about its development, it wasn't optimized in terms of flavour for oral sex. So that might be, an area that we look at in the future, to be honest. But, I think most people who taste it find it, fairly neutral, and there's no reason why they couldn't use it that way.
And then we've got two questions in relation to the pain relief portfolio, and are the plans for development continuing, or is this dependent on Eroxon revenue hitting a threshold?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, we see more value in really driving Eroxon. This is a new product category. The UK is unusual in that it's pretty much the only major market in the world where two of the PD5, Cialis and Viagra, switched to over-the-counter. Everywhere else, throughout the rest of Europe, I think other than Denmark, the US, these products are all prescriptions. So we are creating a new over-the-counter category. Pain relief, you're going into a crowded market already. And I'm not ruling out us doing something in the future, but there's no question the biggest opportunity, the biggest value is around really exploiting Eroxon. And that's where the company's main focus lies at the moment.
The next question. What reasons do your broker give for the share price performance to date? Is the share price being held back by fickle retail investors and by perceived past product failures by Futura? Now, I think the first thing that we can say is that certainly the feedback that we've had from our broker and feedback that we've had from some institutional investors is that given the sector, they're very pleased with how Futura is performing alongside its peers. The market hasn't been great for some time now, but in terms of share price performance, the feedback that we've had is that they're quite pleased by that. Not sure we can comment on fickle retail investors or what the perception is for past product failures. It's a bit of we have quite a high shareholding by retail investors, and it comes with its pros and cons. The benefit of a high retail investor base is it provides a lot of liquidity, but the other side of that is that it's quite unpredictable, and we put good news out and we don't see it move, and then a few days later we see share price moving off the back of no news. So this is not really something that we can comment on in terms of intentions by retail investors. Have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're against a backdrop where interest rates are rising. I think today sort of gilts, you can get over 5%. People will have different reactions. So we are against a backdrop of a difficult market. AIM has flatlined, FTSE has flatlined, but for us at the moment, the focus remains very clear. It's turning Futura from a loss-making company to a revenue one, which we've already done, but then moving it into profit as soon as we can do. And I think the vagaries of the market, it'll correct itself in due course. Yes, we'll be working with brokers to do everything we can do to attract more institutional backing. But you just have to accept we are in the market.
But also, I think we have a clear strategy.
Yeah.
I think it's been apparent that we have, we set out on a strategy. We believe that we have delivered to date on that strategy. And I think our focus is on continuing to deliver that strategy. And we can't control some of the external things that are going on in the market, but we can control us performing and doing all the things that we've said we're going to do. We note your comment re institutions being happy, but have current II given any reasons for reducing holdings, which has pulled the stock into a downward trend? Now, I'm not aware of any significant reduction from institutional investors reducing their holdings, so I can't really comment on that. But the answer was no. We've not had any feedback. With Lombard having such a large holding within the company, do you see this as an issue to attract new institutional investments? No.
They've been very, very supportive.
Yeah. I think it's actually the opposite. I think off the back of Lombard exercising their warrants a couple of weeks ago, especially with the market being the way that it is, to be able to come out and advise the market that we are very well funded. The biggest holdback for any of our peers at the moment is uncertainty around funding. And we don't have that, so I don't think that's an issue, and I think that certainly is a plus point to be able to confirm that we are funded.
Okay. If there are no further questions, I think we'll draw this to a close. First of all, can I, on behalf of the whole board, thank retail investors for supporting the company. Appreciate we've had some stormy times, but the company's is very well positioned now, and I think we're all pretty excited the way it's going. And we look forward to interacting with shareholders in due course, and hopefully some exciting updates for the remainder of the year and into 2024. Thank you very much.
James, Ken, Angela, thank you all for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close the session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Futura Medical PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good morning to you all.